All right, well, it's time now for the campaign beat. All right, it's now our daily roundup of news from the French presidential campaign trail with Florence Vilmido. Hi, Flo. This is our last campaign beat.
It is the last one.
It's coming to an end. Sadly, it's coming to an end. And we've seen the candidates really still hitting the airwaves, trying to get their message out.
Today is the last day of campaigning, and so Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen are trying to make the most of it because, remember, French election rules are very strict. The last 24 hours before Sunday's vote is campaign-free, election-free, and that might be very good news for all of us, well, or you, suffering from election fatigue. It's also a moment of reflection for those who are still trying to make up their minds or hesitating about voting at all.
Indeed. In the meantime, we've seen Emmanuel Macron. He's been surfing the waves of confidence since Wednesday's debate. That certainly was a brutal debate. Political analysts have said that he won that sparring match.
And it has definitely given him a boost in opinion polls. If we look at a poll that was published after the debate, you can see he has a 3-point boost. If the election were held today, he would gather 62% of the vote. Marine Le Pen, 38% there. Keep in mind, these are the last polls that will be broadcast before Sunday because, once again, there are very strict rules in France. On Sunday, until Sunday, there will be a media blackout. You can't talk about exit polls. You can't talk about predictions. The only thing you can talk about on Sunday is the turnout rate. There's a first estimate at noon, a second one at 5 p.m. I'll be at the Ministry of the Interior giving you those figures. And then, of course, you have the official result that comes in at 8 p.m.
Indeed. And Flo, despite the polls showing that she is trailing, Marine Le Pen still believes that she can pull off a victory. This on the wave of populist anger that could bring her all the way to the Élysée. But a lot is going to depend on undecided voters.
And there are a lot of undecided voters. There are also a lot of voters who are tempted to abstain. According to a recent poll, 1 in 4 voters just aren't going to turn up to the polling stations at all on Sunday. So did the debate change anything? Well, for some, yes, and for others, it just confirmed their disappointment in this election. Take a listen.
We didn't want to vote at first, but now I'm leaning towards Macron. But it's by default, against Marine. She was a joke during the debate. It was a presidential debate. We're talking about running the country, and she's laughing. She shows up with a pile of documents, post-it notes, as if she can't remember anything. She can't represent the country.
I watched, but neither convinced me. It was all insults. Only insults. Nothing interesting. I wish they had said, we're going to reform this, this, and this. I can't vote for them. I'll spoil my ballot.
I thought Marine was good in the debate. She handled herself well. I wouldn't say she was aggressive. She was true to herself.
All right, Flo, well, if indeed Emmanuel Macron is elected on Sunday, many, actually, French people will be discovering him as he is a newcomer on the political scene.
He certainly is, and his novelty status is both a strength and a weakness. A lot of people are thrilled that there's going to be, well, could be a change in French politics, but we don't really know that much about him or his personality. For instance, what is his relationship with power? What is his concept of leadership? Well, his years in the Hollande government do give us a few clues, as Charles Pellegrin reports.
How does Emmanuel Macron make decisions? Is he decisive or bent on dialogue and compromise? His experience as François Hollande's economy minister proves one thing. His goal is to stand out.
He's someone who's always been fond of the concept of leadership and power. This is why he was disappointed with François Hollande's presidency, because he believed it lacked the embodiment of power.
For instance, with his labor law, even after 200 hours of debate and heavy criticism on the topic of Sunday work, he stood his ground.
We saw his opposition to the mayor of Paris, and he didn't budge. He charged along and didn't water down the law he wrote.
Decisive or stubborn? When the same law pushed France's notaries to the streets in 2014, this union representative dealt with the former economy minister.
It wasn't really a negotiation, because he promised we would be heard before the government decides. But it was a monologue more than a dialogue.
The negotiations may be one-sided, but he always involves his staff in his decision-making. He also doesn't have a problem saying when his staff got it wrong.
I'm just reading what's written here. In the composition of the governing institutions and the modalities of internal organization. I didn't understand this sentence.
The kind of straightforward manner that has irked his fellow cabinet members, some of which have accused him of trying to do their jobs and treading on their toes.
Of course, Flo, we have been talking about this presidential election for quite some time, but there is another vote just after that is also very important.
Well, if you're getting tired of politics, brace yourself because it's not over yet. We're going to have the parliamentary legislative elections in June, and analysts say it's just as important as the presidential election. 577 members of parliament to be elected. Analysts are expecting a major shakeup of the political makeup of the parliament and a major defeat for the ruling socialists. The party has really been reeling ever since it crashed out of the first round of the presidential election, and questions really have emerged about the future of the Socialist Party, the 50-year-old party. Well, Luke Schrager tells us more.
Disappointment writ large, with its presidential candidate earning just 6.3% of the vote in the first round. France's Socialist Party faced major questions over its future.
This presidential election is a cruel moment for the Socialist Party, which is too divided. This result marks the end of an era and calls for a profound renewal.
Could the death knell be ringing for the party as a political entity? The refrain was even taken up by the socialist former prime minister who himself had endorsed centrist Emmanuel Macron.
The Socialist Party has to move aside and change. It's the end of a story, because we couldn't change our name or overcome or change our nature.
Certainly, the party was already in political trouble. Consistent electoral losses, toxic fallout from socialist President François Hollande's perceived failures, and now the siphoning of its voters both towards the centre and the far left. However, this is far from the first time the left wing's been on the ropes. As far back as 1969, its predecessor came in with just 5% of the vote.
Every time the Socialist Party sees this kind of situation, a serious crisis, it reinvents itself. And in 1969 we saw a complete reinvention along the lines of theory and understanding of the new world we were moving into, and of policy, of organisation, and a reconsideration of political alliances.
It would position François Mitterrand to take the reins as the left wing's first president in modern France in 1981. 30 years later, the Socialists went out in 2002's presidential first round and still they rallied, becoming the second largest party in the French parliament. The difference this time is that it's seen not just the erosion of its base, but of its MPs as well, with many appearing on the point of jumping ship to Macron's En Marche movement for June's parliamentary elections. According to his campaign slogan, Benoît Hamon wanted to make France's heart beat. It seems, though, that a new beat is now needed entirely, one that'll speak to voters who've already decided to sit out the dance.
All right, well, that's all we have time for in the campaign beat. Flo, thank you so much. Of course, you will be back next week with French Connections.
Sure will.
All right, well, thank you very much for that. And if you want to find out more about the Two Candidates program, be sure to head to our website, and that's where you can compare their platforms side by side and proposal by proposal.